And depending upon the deer, there will be a difference in size, and there will also be a difference in the thickness of it. Within each deer hide, there's also a difference in terms of in the respective areas of the hide, different uses of the hide that are used for different things. The neck portion of the hide is generally the thickest part of the hide. In brain tanning, what we call traditional tanning of Ojibwe people, we use the brain of the animal. The brain is prepared in a certain fashion. Today's modern people, what we'll do is we'll actually freeze them until we're ready to use them. The old people that I remember seeing do it long ago, they would actually dry the deer brains on cheesecloth. Refrigeration wasn't available long ago. And so the deer brain is very important in traditional tanning. And the old process then was to soak the hide in a lake or in a river. Generally, moving water is helpful. And depending upon the temperature, what happens is a slight decompensation begins to occur. You have the hair on the hair side of the animal, and through that process, then the deer hair is scraped off. And once the hair is scraped off, then the hide is wrung out, and then the deer brains are prepared, and then the deer hide is put on a rack. And the process of breaking the hide is a very labor-intensive process. And following that, then once the hide is dry and soft, the smoking process now ensues. It's either, some people will use white buckskin, and there are many shades of color that can be produced depending upon the type of wood you use for smoking the hide. So today, brain tan buckskin is a rare object. It's a rare object. Those of us that produce it, we don't give it away cheap.
What do you use the brain for? What do you do with the brain?
The brain is actually, I guess, how in English you could say it, almost like a softening agent that's used in softening the hide.
Oh.
Yeah.
Do you know it?
Today, I guess, if a lot of people like taxidermists and so forth, they actually use chemicals today.
Mm-hmm.
So you can put two hides down right next to each other. This one's chemical, this one's traditional. You can tell the difference in the textures. And just like Frank was talking about earlier with the tongue oil, you know, there are purposes within our culture that we're not allowed to use. We're not allowed to use factory tanned hides, and so we have to secure the real thing for certain uses, certain things.
So would you take the brain and just go like this?
No. If you can imagine, a deer's brain is probably can fit in the palm of my hand, right here. And what happens is the deer brain itself is now almost like, trying to describe what it would look like. Kind of like scrambled eggs, gray. But in any event, what happens is the brains are actually submersed in a small amount of water, and they're boiled. And once they're boiled, if you can imagine a potato masher, the brains are smashed down, and it actually looks like almost like oatmeal. Almost like oatmeal. And what I tell people is, don't cook deer brains in the house. It will smell. Cook them outside. It doesn't smell while you're cooking them. It's after you take the heat off. After you take the heat off, there's a release. There's a release that comes off them right there. And it's not the most pleasant smell. I guess some people might not care for the smell. But yeah, that's what deer brains are used for.
And what would you do with that oatmeal? Do you rub it on the hide or?
Yes, it's actually it's actually just like, I guess, we're trying to permeate the hide with the deer brain solution. And so it's very important. You can tan hides without brains. Some time ago, some of you may have heard of CWD, chronic wasting disease. And out of that chronic wasting disease scare came the concern for brain tissue and backbones. And what Wisconsin DNR was telling people was, don't consume the backbones, don't touch the brains, blah, blah, blah. Well, the reality was that CWD really didn't affect the northern herd at all. It was too many hunting licenses that the DNR sold. That's what affected the herd in northern Wisconsin. Yes, ma'am.
Is your tribe involved at all in the traditional medicines that were used 100 years ago?
Very much so. Very much so. I guess what I'll just tell you very, very briefly is that we are what you call bicultural people. We're bicultural people. And as bicultural people, what that means is I, as a bicultural person, I drive a four-wheel drive pickup truck, but I also walk on snowshoes that I make. I have an aluminum boat, and I have a birch bark canoe. I speak English, I speak Ojibwe.
You're taking the best of both worlds, huh?
I got boots from Texas, I got a pair of moccasins. It's up to me. It's up to me. I'm a member of the Ojibwe Nation. I'm also an American citizen. I have dual citizenship. Any other questions?
Did you have to do anything to become an American citizen?
Oh, about 1922. 1938 is when we had our Constitution, but it was in the 1920s, and this is after our grandfathers participated in World War I. What was called the Citizenship Act was passed. Anybody know American history? And for those of you that are women, you became very empowered on that day.
Yeah.
Any other questions? How about any questions for our artists?
Well, I always love to know how a person learns to do different things. Is it something that handed down to you from your birth spark?
I learned from Jerry Malson.
Okay.
I was at one of his shows he had uptown during 4th of July. You see us sitting up there, and I admired a lot of his baskets. So I kept asking, "Why don't you teach me?" He said, "Well, just come out." And finally, I went out and he taught me how to make a small basket, and I started making them. And somebody wanted me to make another one for them. And I just ended up making them like he did. He encouraged me to go out and sell baskets.
Well, your husband told me that when you look at a piece of birch bark, you see an eagle.
Well, there's certain markings on here. In this particular one, I don't have one, but the markings on it are probably where branches were coming out, and it looks like an eagle.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, he's the one that goes out. I used to go out with him, but I don't anymore. He gets all the bark and it's the basswood that I use, and he makes a lot of the baskets himself.
Sandy, maybe you could describe to these guys how the bark is harvested?
Yeah.
Like I said, David does it. No, you just, well, to pick a tree out, we usually just go on River Road. It's way north of Flambeau here. And the trees I like to pick is one that don't have too many markings on it. It's nice and clean. And I use a carpenter's knife, and we cut in about, start a small, to see if it's gonna peel, I'll just mark it and score it to see if it's ready to peel. And if it's ready to peel, then I'll cut down maybe an 1/8 of an inch depending on if you first test the tree to see how far you can go into that tree. That'll tell you right away if it's ready to peel or not. And we'll make a large, as far as we can reach, and cut it, and it will break away from the tree when it's ready to, and that's how we harvest the bark.
I know that you have your birch bark classes in the summer.
Yes.
But are there other times of year that you do cut the birch?
Just when we start cutting in June, maybe early May, because then we can get this winter bark off. And winter, it's not necessarily winter bark as much, it starts coming off in the beginning of the season with a film on it, where I can scratch, where you'll be able to put designs on it. And then when it starts doing that, it'll come off clean in the summertime and it pops away from the tree. And then it'll start sticking again, where you have to pull it away from the tree again. And that's, right now it's doing that. So it's, and you can only get it June and July, and then it starts sticking to the tree again.
Any other questions?
Then how do you soften the bark?
I don't soften the bark. I use it right away. If I can't use that bark right away, that's why he goes out almost every night. He'll go out and get 5 or 6 sheets of bark, because we learned the hard way that if you don't use it right away, it'll curl up on you, then it's just kindling.
Does the bark grow back on the tree then?
It doesn't go back the same way, it scars the tree.
Okay.
It's a darker bark, but it will, even if you cut, like I've gone out there and seen somebody where they've cut the tree before, and that all scabs over, just like skin does, and it'll heal itself. So it does grow back, but not regular bark like you think. It'll just be a big scab on that tree.
But it doesn't kill the tree?
It doesn't kill the tree as long as you don't go too deep. If you cut too deep, you can kill the tree, yes. The basket we use, that does kill the tree. We usually just cut the tree right down. It's easier to get the bark off if you cut the tree down. And to make the string for this takes quite a long time, because you have to soak that bark in water, let it ferment, and if you soak it about 3 weeks, it'll start to fray away from the bark itself, and then you can peel away that string and make smaller pieces for sewing it together with.
You sew it with basswood string?
Yes,
The inner bark of the basswood tree she's describing.
yes.
The inner bark, wiggle, that's what we call it in the language.
Then I'll use the bark itself to rim it.
Do you have a special needle that you sew with?
Just a regular old darning needle. Just a regular old darning. David did make me some needles one time, right from birch bark. Just cut a thin strip, made a point, and then you fold it in half, and then catch your thread that way with the birch bark. That was for you guys, the show for you guys. I use needles at home. When you see me making that, you'll see me use it all. At home, I use a Dremel. That's one of those things that are improving and making it easier.
Yeah.
Any other questions?